All right, so welcome to the new club workshop for the 2021-2022 academic year. And congrats, right? You just made it through the new club process, which is not an easy process. It is a long process that it's beneficial in the end because you are all set and you will be all set for the future requirements that we do ask you to complete every year. You're in a really good spot, but it is long, and I definitely appreciate you all taking part in it and being very responsive with changes or updates that need to be made to your materials. So the presentation today will provide you with information that you need to be able to successfully hold your leadership position within the organization, right? So we're going to go through things like SB Engaged, 25 Live, all of those good things that are important in order for you to be able to manage your organization effectively. So before we get started, really, you all went through this process for a reason, and that is because university recognition allows you to have rights and privileges, including being able to now educate the campus community about your organization and its mission, host events and meetings on campus by reserving spaces. You can develop your leadership skills. We do host leadership workshops for our club and org leaders every semester. You are eligible to receive budget from either USG or GSO. You can take part in campus events such as the involvement fairs and other traditional events like Spooky Brook or anything like that. You can co-sponsor university traditions, and you are eligible for a variety of campus awards, including the Student Life Awards. So these are some of the benefits of university recognition. Now you have recognition, and now you got to keep it, right? So in order to have continued recognition, you have to have 2 e-board members attend a new club workshop, which we're doing right now. Make sure that everyone on your e-board has read over and understood the policies outlining the community guidelines for recognized student organizations. And I say that because failure to adhere to those policies could lead to organizational conduct charges, which is like the individual conduct process, but for any organizational activities. The most important thing for us as far as administrative things is that you have to re-register every year. So re-registration happens around April every year, and that is when you will provide us information on your updated e-board for the fall, information if on your constitution, if anything has changed, really any updates for your organizations that have happened throughout the last year. And you have to make sure that you re-register every year in order to continue your recognition. Otherwise, you become what's called inactive. And if you're inactive for more than a year, your organization becomes defunct, which means that you would have to go through the new club process all over again. In the spring, we do what's called e-board updates. So, during the spring, we will send out information probably in a couple of weeks. And basically, we just want to know if your e-board has changed. This is primarily for our not new organizations, right? Sometimes our organization e-boards change mid-semester for whatever reason. And we just want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information on file, but you will still be required to fill it out saying, yes, my e-board is still the same, or no, and this is what the changes are. And then you want to make sure that you're keeping up to date with requirements. So you all, everyone on your e-board has to complete Prevent Zone. They're going to have to complete Title IX training. Sometimes we will email you with additional requirements that must be met, but for the most part, Prevent Zone and Title IX are going to be your main ones for now. And just make sure you're meeting deadlines and keeping up to date with everything. We primarily will send you communications to the email address for your organization that you provided through the registration process. So just make sure that there's multiple people have eyes on that, so that, right, if the president is the only one with that email address access and they just happen to have a really busy week, you don't want to be missing out on important information. So make sure that a few people have access to your inbox so that you have all the information that you need. So who we are and what we do. I should have introduced myself. My name is Mel Farron. I am a program coordinator for student engagement and activities, right? So within our department, this is our current staff. We have 3 program coordinators, including myself. And then we have Christine, our director, Melissa, our associate director, and Sam Thompson, our associate director for FNS. So within our department, we oversee all recognized student organizations and fraternities and sororities. So it really hovers between 325 to 350 organizations at any given time in the year. We provide program advising, which really is program planning, understanding policies and procedures, risk management, and resource allocation. So each one of you, if you have not already been contacted by your program advisor, you will have an assigned program advisor who is different than your faculty and staff advisor. And your program advisor from our end is the one who's going to be approving your events on SB Engage, talking through to you about risk management, about any policies that we might have, right? So they're going to be your go-to person from our area. Our department manages SB Engaged as well as Court, which is the app version of SB Engaged, and the event pass. We approve some events on 25 Live. We process all organization events on 25 Live, and we're able to approve anything that happens in the SAC or the union. Anything that's happening outside of those spaces, we send out to the appropriate parties, but they do go through our office first. We do organizational conduct. So again, as I mentioned, if we find that the organization is in violation of the student code or the community guidelines, the organization will be subject to the organizational conduct process. We do re-registration. So that's what I mentioned. Every year, organizations apply for their continued recognition. This process typically opens in April and goes throughout the whole summer. And we do e-board updates every semester. We obviously do the new club and organization process, which you all just took part in. We have our programs and traditions team that puts on events almost every weekend. They're the ones responsible for weeks of welcome, spooky brook, craft nights, comedians, magicians, all of that good stuff. We host the involvement fairs every semester. So we have our fall ones, which are typically outdoors. If you haven't been to one, I definitely recommend you do so next fall. And then we have the spring ones, which are currently going to be taking place virtually. You all have not missed information on spring involvement fair, so don't fret. I will be sending out some information on how to sign up for those in the next few weeks after you get back from break. And then we also do involvement coaches. So we have a group of students who assist their peers and students in finding ways to get involved and engaged on campus through workshops, programs, and one-on-one meetings. So I told you we provided program advising. So I want to delve in a little deeper as to who and what your program advisor is and does. So each recognized organization will have an assigned program advisor. Some of you, depending on when you were approved, might have already received communications from that person. And some of you may have not, but you will within the next week or so, right? So next week or so. So your program advisor works closely. They either work in our department or work closely with our department. And they are not your faculty staff advisor, right? It is a separate person. It's either myself, Troy, who's on this call, Matt, our grad students, right? They are here to support you in your program planning, your risk management, understanding policies, helping you navigate 25 Live and SB Engage, all of that. Your program advisor will be your main contact for anything related to reserving space. Again, program planning or policies. Also, again, if you have not received it yet, you will be receiving it within a week or so. You will be getting your 25 Live login information. We will go into 25 Live and how to use it, but that is our platform for reserving space on campus for in-person meetings and events. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and either myself or Troy or Matt, who are on this call, again, they are my fabulous grad students who help us run the department, and they're really awesome, and they have all the answers for everything. So they can help out in the chat box, and they might be your program advisor. That's also really cool. You can always contact us. We used to be in the SAC. We moved over to the Student Union. We're in Suite 205, so on the second floor. You can also give us a call or email us. If you want to meet with us, definitely make an appointment with your program advisor as our schedules sometimes change. And just to note that our department is not responsible for organizational funding, right? So if you're interested in the money piece of being an organization, you're going to want to speak directly to USG if you're an undergraduate group or GSO if you're a graduate group. But again, you don't need to be funded to host events. You can fundraise, or you can just do events that don't require you to have money, right? So don't let that be a deterrent. And follow us on social media. We on SB Engaged, at SB Engaged on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I think that's it. We post updates for our clubs and organizations, students generally. We put information up on events coming up. And we shout out our student groups once a month through our Rep Your Squad. So if you have cool events coming up and you want us to push them out to our followers, definitely follow us so that you can take advantage of that. So let's get started. Again, I'm going to go through a ton of information. If you have questions, please put in the chat box or wait till the end, write it down, right? Don't forget. We don't expect you to be experts once you finish this, but we do expect you to sort of try to grasp some of the basics of what it is, and then work with your program advisor throughout the year to really make sure that you're getting a handle on how to best utilize these platforms. So SB Engage, which you should be familiar with because that is where you did your initial proposal, that is where you did your part 2 registration, right? That is our main hub for all things clubs and organizations. Within SB Engage, you're able to do a few things, right? So it's really good for advertising your events. Now, I want you to like tattoo this on your arm somewhere, but any event, meeting, anything like that that your group is planning to have has to be put on SB Engaged and be approved by your program advisor before it can happen, right? Events on SB Engaged can be found on the Cork app and on Campus Connect weekly newsletter, right? So once they're approved, you can start advertising them. You can start putting them on your social media, and then our weekly listserv collects the events directly from SB Engaged and puts them on the newsletter to share out to the whole university. We have event categories that you should be using to better advertise your events, right? Because we have so many events happening on any given day, you want to make sure that you're using the event categories so that if students are filtering by community service events or arts and crafts events, they're finding your events and they're not having to search through a bunch of other things, right? SB Engage is really good at letting you track attendance and membership for your organization. So we have the Campus Labs check-in app that helps you do contactless check-in for in-person events and meetings. And someone basically just has to show you their event pass, and then you boop them into your event. And once you boop them, that automatically, that data automatically goes into your SB Engaged event. So you're able to keep track. You're able to download that list of email address after and send correspondences or anything like that. So it's really helpful in having all of that information in one place. It helps you find organizations, your own and others as well. And it helps you manage your organization, right? Including your roster, pictures, documents, events. We'll go through some of that. Within SB Engaged, just one thing I want to note is that on the main page on the bottom, we have what's called important campus links. And that's really important because we will update that depending on the time of the semester with any links that are most relevant to you. But some of the ones that always live there would be reference forms. So anytime you're having a non-Stony Brook entertainer or speaker come to your group, right, to do a panel or anything like that, you want to make sure you're filling out a reference form for that person. We have our Student Life Award nomination form. So every year we do our Student Life Awards, and we allow each group to self-nominate themselves for a variety of award categories, individual, organization, or leadership awards. So definitely recommend you take a look at that. And then we have our e-board member update form. So this particular form is only if your e-board, an e-board member happens to drop halfway and you do a special election, right? Otherwise, if it's in between semesters, we send you a different form to fill out so you don't have to worry about it. So unless your board is changing halfway through a semester, right, at an awkward time, that is when you would do the e-board member update form. So how to use it, right? So on SB Engage, you log in with your personal SVU credentials, right? Your net ID and password. All of your e-board members, right? Your core e-board members, so president, vice president, secretary and treasurer, and event coordinator, I believe, have all access to the organization. But they only have all access if you've already gone in and accepted your position on the e-board, right? So make sure that all of you on this call and also everyone on your e-board has accepted their membership and position on your organization's e-board. And you will know if they have, because you would be able to see it on the roster, right? Their name would come up and their position would be right next to them. If you are not assigned an e-board position, then that means you do not have access to manage the features within the organization. SB Engage, you can create virtual events, right? So we've been doing a lot more virtual events now, and in the virtual events, you're able to provide an online location. So you should all have been able to access our event today through that feature. In-person events, right, first require you to reserve space on 25 Live. So while online events go directly to SB Engage, right, because there's no physical space that is happening, in-person events need you to first reserve space using our 25 Live platform, which we will go over. Once you create your event, whether virtual, hybrid, in-person, whatever that looks like, your program advisor will review it. Sometimes, depending on the event, you'll have to set up a meeting with us to really discuss the details and go through risk management. But sometimes it's just an easy approval on our end. And once you're approved, you are all set to execute it, right? I will send out this presentation early next week to all of you so that you have access to the links and whatnot, but within the presentation, there are detailed instructions on how to use both SB Engaged and 25 Live. Quick reminders for when you're doing your SB Engaged events, make sure you're adding in a graphic. If you don't add in like an event flyer or something like that, the system like picks one for you and they're not like the nicest. So keep that in mind. Add an accessibility statement in your description. So that can be something as simple as, if you require accessibility accommodations, please email us. If someone were to email you and you're not quite sure how to provide them those accommodations, email student engagement activities and we will support you in that case. And then the last thing is be mindful of who you're sharing your events with. When you're creating events, it will give you the option for visibility of either public, students and staff, or organization only, right? So public means that you don't need to sign into the system in order to see the event, which means that Joe Schmo from down the street can see it. Therefore, they believe they are invited to the event and can just show up. Students and staff at SB Engage means that you need to be signed into the system in order to see the event, right? So basically, then you are just inviting people from the Stony Brook community, right? Stony Brook University community, or organization only means that only people who are in your organization's roster will be able to see that event. There is a fourth option that is invitation only, which you would have to, as it says, right, put in the email addresses of the people who are invited to the event, and only those people would be able to see it. So let's look at SB Engaged for a second. So, can someone confirm that you are indeed seeing my SB Engaged?
Yep.
Awesome, thank you. Cool. So this is what your main page is going to look like, right? So you have your tabs up here, your Explore section, your membership section. So here's where you will see your organization's name. So if you're not seeing your organization here, it means you have not accepted your membership to it. So make sure you do that. Down here, you're going to see all events, and you can always click more events. This will give you the ones coming up next, right? So it's like 4 o'clock. I have not refreshed this, right? So it's 4:20 p.m. right now. So I'm seeing anything that is happening now or will be happening soon. Latest news. So your organization can create news articles that show up to anyone on the SB Engage system. So also a really great way to advertise events or any initiatives that your group might be doing. And then here are the campus links that I was telling you about, right? So take a look through this. You wouldn't need anything on here right now necessarily, but I do want to make these available to you. So sometimes your program advisor will be like, oh yeah, go to this form under campus links. That is where you're going to find it. So let me go back up. So here, before I go through this, our search is really sort of handy dandy because it searches within all the categories, right? So within a search, it'll show you events, organizations, news, or forms that are related to your keyword, right? So if I am looking for something regarding Thanksgiving, right? I'm seeing events that are about Thanksgiving. I'm seeing news articles that are about Thanksgiving. If I'm looking at something like community service, right now I see events, I see organizations that are related to community service and news articles as well. So it's really helpful in that sense. So I just wanted to point that out. You can also just go directly to your events tab if you're looking specifically for different events, right? So you can filter events using the options here on the left. These are the categories that I was talking about, right? So when you're creating your event, you want to make sure you're assigning categories, and you can always do more than one depending on what you're doing. But let's say I am looking for something to do this weekend related to movies and games. Now I'm seeing all of the events that are categorized as such, right? So that's really cool. I can also search events by this weekend only, things that are happening tomorrow, or if you wanted to, you can see past events. So that is a little bit on the events portion of it. And as you can see, let me go back. So this is what it looks like when you put in your event flyer, right? Wow, so nice. And then these little creepy ones are the ones that you see when you don't put an event flyer, right? So it's just a very general picture that SB Engage assigns for you. So definitely recommend adding in flyers to really capture the attention of students, staff, people who are who you want to attract to your event. The organizations tab, that is how you can search for all organizations in the system, so departments and students. Only active organizations will show, right? So we do have some orgs that are inactive because they haven't been registered, so you would not be able to see them on your end over here. But there's 421 departments and student orgs. You can search by names or keywords that they have within their organization description, or you can search by categories, right? So if you're looking for a fraternity and sorority, they would all pop up here. News, exactly what it sounds like, right? So different news articles. You can see this is by the Faculty Student Association, by Do It, right? And forms. So sometimes you have to fill out forms, right? So if you're doing an off-campus trip, you do a student driver form. If your faculty advisor has changed, you would have them do this form. So this is just another place where you can find possible forms that you might need to submit. I don't believe you all need to submit anything as of now, but if we ever say, you know, oh, fill out this form and we don't provide you the link, that is probably a really good place to go look for it. So one of my favorite things to talk about, especially for new groups, is this really fun thing where, let's see who's here. Paper airplanes. I want to see if you all have, okay. So paper airplanes does not show a vice president on here. That doesn't mean they don't have one. It means that their vice president has not updated their, their privacy settings for the roster. So when you go to your page and you're like, oh my God, I'm missing a person. But if you're actually not missing that person, right? So if you actually go into the roster and they show up there, well, paper airplanes, your vice president needs to approve their membership. If they were actually there, right, that means that their privacy settings are off, right? So you're gonna go to account, you're gonna go to privacy settings, and you're gonna scroll down to organization roster settings. So this is what it would show up if you have not selected an option. So I am a member and a program advisor for Actors Conservatory. So I can decide to show, right, my name on their roster now publicly as their program advisor, right? So this means that someone who is not signed in can search for Actors Conservatory, and here I am, right now I'm popped up. You don't have to have provide access for people to see you on the public roster, but if you want to, that is how you would accomplish it, because we get questions about that all the time. So I just wanted to make sure I point that out. So again, within this account part, you can access your own event pass, event history. So this shows any event that you have attended and checked into, your membership. So when I say make sure you accept your memberships, this is where you would go, and it would give you the option to accept your vice presidency for paper airplanes, right? There's experiences, service hours, involvement records, submissions, notifications, and downloads. One other thing you're most likely going to be using is the submissions, right? So anytime, very much like you did for your initial step 1 form, how you did it for your registration, whenever you're submitting for your events, you can find those submissions here, right? We have events, org registrations, right? Elections, all of that stuff. Whenever your program advisor says, oh, great, I denied it, or I approved it, but go back and edit it, you can go right here, find what it is you're looking for, right? And edit it, edit the event, or edit the form instead of creating a brand new one. Does that make sense for everyone? You don't have to answer, but if you have questions, please let me know. So let's take a look at our organizations and how to manage them. Okay, so I'm going to go into my friend's Actors Conservatory, right? Once you've accepted your membership to the organization, you will be able to see this little Manage Organization tab. So this brings you to the back end as you have full administrative privileges to your own organization. So within it, you can see the roster, the About section, so that has your organization description and your email address and whatnot. Any events that you're having, your news articles, photos, documents, so that's going to be your constitution, your bylaws, anything along those lines. Any forms, elections, finance, and service hours. So what I really want to focus on is the roster. So that the roster is going to be a really important part of you being able to manage your organization effectively. You want to make sure that you're keeping this up to date, right? So with our friends Actors Conservatories, they're showing about 106 members. Do they actually have 106 active members? I'm not sure. My guess would be probably no. So it could be that they have not updated their roster yet for the semester, but you want to make sure that you're keeping this up to date because it helps you really understand who's your active membership in your organization, right? Who has been coming to meetings, who can see stuff on your page, right? Your organization only events. You don't want to have alumni or anything like that still on your roster because it's skewing your numbers, right? If we're looking at constitutions and quorum and stuff, you want to make sure that this is as up to date as possible. So within your roster, you can see everyone's name. And then if they hold a position on the e-board, they're going to have this little position name here. You can edit people's positions by just using this little pencil icon, and it shows up any possible position that you have created within the organization, right? So the hard-coded ones that you're always going to see are going to be your core executive board, your program advisor, your faculty staff advisor, and the primary contact, but you are able to create other positions should you choose. And then you would be able to assign that person, right, a position, save. I'm not going to do it for them because they're going to get notified. And that would show up, right, head, crew there. If you're trying to create a position, right, let's say that your organization has a public relations officer, you're going to go up to this Manage Positions button and create a position, right? So here you would write relations. I never spell, especially when I'm being videotaped. They would be an officer. So this allows the holders of the position to be shown on the public roster, but again, this person would still have to go in and update their privacy settings. And you always want to make sure it's an active position so that shows up. And then here's where you give them different access to the administrators within your page. So no access means that they won't have that manage organization button that we clicked in order to get to this back end. All access means that they have as much access as anyone on the executive board does, right? So they can access every single feature within the organization, or you can limit their access. And if you click limit access, you have to go through and individually pick what they have access to, right? So if I'm thinking about a public relations person, I think that they should definitely have full access to events, right? They should have full access to forms, messaging, they are public relations, and photos, and let's say profile as well, right? So now they would be able to edit things within each of these, I'm losing my train of thought, y'all. Within each of these different categories or management features, but then they wouldn't be able to edit anything within the roster. They wouldn't be able to do anything with re-uploading a constitution or creating elections for your organization. So you can pick and choose what you give them access to, or you can give them all access, or you can give them no access. It's really up to you. And this can always be changed. It's not the position name and stuff, I don't think can be changed, but all of this stuff will be able to be changed after the fact. So that's how you create it. And then once it's created, right, you would go here and Anthony, my friend, would then become the public relations officer. And I would select it, and then it would notify him that now he has an additional membership in my organization. So something else for the roster, just so you know, pending. This means that you have invited members and they have yet to accept their membership, right? So if I were to go back to our friend's paper airplanes, let's see. If I go to pending, I can see that we're waiting on a few people to accept their membership to the organization. So they would just have to go in and do that. Prospective means that outside people have asked to join your organization, and you would have the ability to accept or deny the membership into your org. And terms and conditions you don't have to currently worry about. Within this, you can also use the messaging feature to message anyone in your currently in your roster. You can also do a text message feature through this as well. It would send it to the phone numbers that we have on file for them in the system. You can invite people to join your organization with their email addresses, and then they would go into that pending tab until they accept their membership. And then the really fun part is that you can export your roster. So then you have a full list of email addresses that you're able to copy and paste and do whatever you need to with that information. Other stuff that you might need to use is the about section. You can always make small tweaks to this. Try not to make any changes to your statement of purpose, which is this full description down here, because we approved you based on a statement of purpose. So if you do want to make any changes, please run it by us first, but you can absolutely make changes to your summary. Let's say you know that your meetings are going to be Wednesdays at 8 p.m. You can always add that there or something like that, but just make sure you're keeping up to date with that. Contact information, don't add any personal contact information on here. This is all public facing, right? So Joe Schmo from down the street can see what your phone number is if you add it on here. You can update your social media and whatnot. My last thing for you all is if you ever update your email address, please let us know, because we don't get notified when you do it on SB Engage. And then we're going to be emailing the old email address and you're not going to get information. Then that's not going to be fun. And all right, we're running out of time, and I'm trying to talk really fast, even though I'm stumbling on my words, but it's okay. Events, right? That's going to be the main thing that you're using SB Engage for, right? So you're going to go to your events tab. Something to note is the person who creates the event is the only person that is then able to make any edits to that event before it is approved. So just keep that in mind. Very much like your registration form, once one person does it, that is the only person who really has access to edit it until it is approved. So you are going to create your event, and this is what you're going to see, right? So you're going to click your event title, your theme. These are all hard-coded. So let's say we're doing arts and music. Your description, you can add an additional co-hosting organization, right? So if you are working with another organization, you're going to add them here, because now that event is not only going to show up on your page once it's approved, but it's also going to show up on there. So that's really awesome. You would select the time and place, right? Let's just pretend this is it. If it's an online event, right? So if it has a Zoom link or something, you're going to want to add it there. Otherwise, you add in, let's say SAC 302. And that is what's going to show up on the event, so people know where they're going. This is the visibility that we went through, right? So the public means anyone can see it without being signed into the system. Students and staff, you have to be signed into the system. Members of all hosting organizations, right? So people who are on actors conservatories or actors conservatories roster and student engagement roster are the only people who can see it, or invited users only. So I would have to manually type in the email addresses of the people who are invited to this event. So we always recommend students and staff at SB engaged if it's an open event for the campus community, or if it's just, you know, for your organization members, then organizations only. You're going to choose event categories. Again, we're doing arts and crafts, and my event is in person. And then you have the ability for the perks, because you can filter by perks as well. Oh, before I forget, hold on. Really important for when we're doing GBMs. So GBMs are typically, you know, like a weekly reservation that you do, and they happen at the same time, but every week. And what I don't want you to do is go in and have to create a gazillion different events like this and wait for approval for each one. Instead, what you're going to do is click this add another date right here, right? And change the date. And this really works well for GBMs or recurring meetings that happen at the same date and time that are going to have the same information. So then when your program advisor looks at it, they're approving everything at once. And then as you go through a semester, let's say that you're going to have a GBM that's really special, you can always go into that particular approved event and edit it a little bit. But you sort of have avoided having to do it every single week for every single GBM that doesn't require any special or additional information. All right, so you can do RSVP for your events. And RSVP allows, right, anyone who RSVPs to your event, it allows you to message them directly. It allows you to send them the reminders about your events and whatnot. You can also do a post-event feedback. So this is a survey for anyone who attends your event, right? If you track attendance and those email addresses go into the system, you can do sort of an post-event feedback notification, which is like an Uber rating of stars, like how much did you enjoy this event? Or you can get a little fancy with it and add specific questions based on what you want to know. Upload your cover photo, right? Otherwise you get the creepy pre-selected image from the system. And then you won't have the access to skip. I have administrative access to the system, so I can skip. You would continue to custom fields. I mean, it doesn't give you access. And then everything after this is pretty self-explanatory, right? So we ask you questions and they're all on conditional logic depending on what kind of event you're having, right? So if I'm having a virtual or online meeting, right, that means it's only virtually. So something like this, you would click yes. And the questions that you have to do for an only virtual event are a lot shorter, right? Because there's a lot less that goes into that. Whereas if I'm having a hybrid event or an in-person event, right, if there's any form of in-person component, I'm going to click no, and it's going to ask me for a few different things. And I'm not going to go through the whole form because it can get lengthy. Oh, darn it. It can get lengthy depending on what you're doing. I'm surprised it didn't, okay, never mind. All right, we're obviously not going to go through that, but you continue to go through the form and answer all the questions. It's going to ask you about uploading your 25 live confirmation if you already have the space reserved. It's going to ask you about what kind of food are you having? Do you have a food permit? Oh, you're doing an off-campus trip. Do you have your roster? Do you have drivers? Like, it's all conditional logic, and you just have to answer it to the best of your ability. Once your program advisor reviews it, they're either going to approve or deny the event. While it's sort of in a pending state, you can't make any changes to the form, but once they approve or deny, you can go back in and edit things as needed, right? Sometimes we will approve an event and in the comments say, hey, this event is conditionally approved. Please go back and upload the food permit once you have it. And you can always go back to your submissions, edit that event, and upload the food permit that we need, and then we will approve it again. Any questions on SB Engaged and events and whatnot before we go on to 25 Live?
Which tab is the button to make an event again? Sorry.
Sure. So when you're in your organization, there's a few ways to do it, but you can go manage organization and go to events. And then you can create an event, or if you click this little, I think they call it a kebab menu. No, this is a kebab. I don't know. No, this is a kebab menu. You're gonna have this manage feature, and it's gonna show you your memberships, right? So I can click that, and it's the same thing. And then you go to events and create an event. Other questions? Okay. If not, just throw them in the chat and one of the grads will help answer, or I can catch it on at the end. All right, let's go back here and let's start talking about 25 Live. So SB Engaged is the step after 25 Live if you're having an event in the physical space. If your event is only online, or if it's a social media campaign, or if it's an online fundraiser, then you don't have to do anything with 25 Live. You go directly to SB Engaged. But anytime that you need to reserve a physical space for a GBM, a meeting, a fundraiser, anything like that, you're going to start with the 25 Live system, right? So if you haven't already, you will receive 25 Live login information. So it's one login code for the organization as a whole. You don't get individual usernames and passwords for each member. So if you haven't received it, we will get it out to you by the end of next week. If you have received it, it would be in your club's email, right? So we sent it to your club email so that multiple people have access to it. Make sure you keep that information safe, and the people who need the access to that information have it. So 25 Live, you're going to use to request space on campus. So you're going to request SAC, Union, Rec Center, classrooms around campus, the library, Bauman Center, previously known as LDS, Tabler Roth, right? Most of these spaces are on 25 Live. The system will only allow you to book no less than 2 weeks out, right? So if today is the 19th, I would not be able to see any available space before December 3rd. So keep that in mind. And we do that because it takes us a while to review it, but then it also takes you a while to then put it on SB Engaged. And then for us to set up a meeting to discuss how many tables do you need, how many chairs do you need, what audiovisual equipment do you need, right? So we need those at least 2 weeks to be able to go through all of that information. If you're having a really large scale event, right? You're having a fashion show, if you're having a dance camp, something that requires a lot of logistics, you definitely need more than those 2 weeks. 2 weeks is the bare minimum that you should be giving us. For in-person events, right now it just asks you to provide some information as to why it's in person. I actually don't know if that's still on there, but it used to be for COVID reasons. And then there's different types of reservations that you can do, right? So there's block booking, which is when you book your weekly or bi-weekly like meetings for your organization, either for GBMs or executive board meetings. So these meetings, what you're going to request is once a week, for no more than 50 minutes, and it has to happen on the hour, right? So it has to start at 6 p.m., at 7 p.m., at 8 p.m. It can't be from 7:30 to 8:20 or something like that. And we do that so that there's 10 minutes of passing time between organizations, because usually at night, right, most of our organizations are having their meetings. And we want to make sure that, one, we can accommodate everyone, and there's a little wiggle room so that you're not pressed up against each other with your reservations. If your meeting requires audiovisual for basically every time that you meet, you're going to want to reserve space in the classroom, because all of our classroom spaces have AV already installed in them, or like a student union meeting room. The SAC is a little older, so a lot of our spaces there don't have AV within it, and we can't provide you AV for weekly meetings, right? We have portable multimedia kits that we can provide, but those are really for like one-off events. So make sure that if you need, you're going to be doing presentations every week for your meetings, you're really booking a classroom or something like that. But if you are booking classrooms, you cannot have food in those spaces, so keep that in mind. If you are a performance group, a sports group, something like that, you would have access to what's called practice space, and that usually happens in the band practice room, the SAC rehearsal room, or the rec center. We have lit tables, which are really just when you're doing tabling, right? So one table, two people, for fundraising, for awareness of your organization, anything like that. Lit tables are available in the SAC, right outside in the plaza or inside in the lobby. Same thing in the union, inside in the lobby or outside on the patio, and the library Horseshoe. The library Horseshoe, you can't reserve on 25 Live. That one has to be reserved via SB Engaged, and we reach out to the library to secure that space for you. Programs and events, right? So these are events that need to happen in bigger programming spaces. So those are typically going to happen in the SAC Odd, SAC A, SAC B, which is not currently available because it's being used for testing, Bauman Center, Tabler, Roth, any of those programming spaces. For those, what I really want you to keep in mind is that you want to make sure you're accounting for pre-event and post-event time, right? So pre-event and post-event time, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a bit, is the time that you and your members need to decorate, set up your materials, right? All of that stuff. It's usually like an hour or so, and that is when you can come into the space before your event actually starts to put things together. Then there's what's called setup and breakdown time, which now you know why it can get confusing, but setup and breakdown time is for our facilities team to put your tables and chairs and AV up, right? And you as the organization should not be in the space while they are doing that, obviously for safety reasons. Within our programming spaces, we have AV resources available to you, including projection, microphones, laptops, podiums. Some spaces have stages available, others have some additional AV available. So let us know if you're looking for something in particular, and we can let you know what space is going to work the best for you. Off-campus trips do not go through 25 Live. Those are going to go directly through SB Engaged. And there is detailed instructions for 25 Live, but let's take a look at what that looks like, right? So this is 25 Live for my friends, the African Student Union. So I am signed in as them, and this is what it's going to look like, right? So you have your start events, so you can start your events for easy access here. But really what you're going to be looking at is creating an event. Before you create an event, you're going to want to sort of search to see what spaces are available, right? So you can search typically by location. So let's say I want to have a fashion show in April, right? So I know that I want to have it somewhere in the SAC, either the Odd or SAC A. So I search SAC. I know that I want to have at least 200 people attending, right? So once I do that, it limits my option to anything that has a capacity above 200. And then I'm going to click this little availability button. So let's go take a look at April and see what's available. So now I can see all of these spaces on this date, right? And I can Friday, April 1st, it looks like I have the SAC odd available all day. I can look at the 2nd, right, and so on and so forth. So I know that April 1st is looking pretty good. So you can either click here for create an event or click this event form up here. Right, and then you fill out this with your information. My event type is going to be a student program. I am the primary organization, and let's just say I am collaborating with the Black Women's Association, and we're expecting 350 people. Your event description, please be sure to be very descriptive as to what you're doing, because this helps us make sure that we can accommodate you in a space that is the best fit for your event, right? So like I said, if I wanted to have food for my fashion show, then I can't have the SAC odd because we don't do food in the SAC odd. So be specific so that we can then, right, if something seems off, we'll give you a call and be like, hey, I know you requested this, but this is the policy, like, how do you want to move forward? But if we can't gather that information, then sometimes you get denied because we don't have enough information to be able to place you accordingly. Right, so my description is going to be very, very good. We're going to go to April. And then I'm just making this up, right? My fashion show is going to be 7 to 10. Now, always click down on this additional time, especially when you're doing a program, right? This is not something you're going to use for your GBMs or anything like that, because you don't need really setup time and we don't really allow setup time. But for your bigger events and programs, you're going to want to do this, right? So setup time and takedown time is something that we will take care of, right? Typically, it's about an hour to an hour and a half. But what I want you to worry about is this pre-event and post-event time, right? So pre-event time is how much time your group needs to set your stuff up, right? So I'm going to say an hour, but then post-event time is for my group's breakdown, and I only need 30 minutes. So as you can see, with that, this 5 p.m. is for starting at setup, right? So the reservation starts at 5. From 5 to 6, our facilities team is setting up. From 6 to 7, we're setting up, right? Our event starts at 7, ends at 10. From 10 to 10:30, we're breaking down as an organization, and from 10:30 to 11:30, the facilities team is breaking down the space. Let me know if you have questions on that. So your whole reservation is 6 hours and 30 minutes, and you can start, your organization can get into the space at 6 o'clock after the 1 hour setup time for our facilities team. Let's say this was a GBN, you can always select additional dates that you want this to happen, or click the repeating pattern, right? So that you can do a weekly thing. But because it's a fashion show, we're just going to leave it as one date. And then I'm going to search locations, right? So here you'll see that SAC A is unavailable, right? SAC B is unavailable, but these are the places that are available for my event. I'm going to request the SAC odd. And then you're going to type in information for your room setup, right? So I want theater style. And if you don't know what you want, that's fine. We can work with you on that, right? Projector, no minors will be present, and I'm not serving food because I'm in the odd. This should be your organization's information. You're going to agree to the building policies, and then you're going to submit the request. Once you submit the request, it's going to show up as a draft. Don't be alarmed. When it's a draft, it means that you have submitted it. We've received it. We just have not reviewed it or really taken any action on it, right? So once it's a draft, it just means it's sort of sitting on our to-do pile. Once we review it, there's a few things that can happen. One, we will confirm the space, especially if it's in the SAC or the union. We might deny the request because the space is already taken, or you didn't provide enough information in your description or something along those lines. Or we would mark it tentative, which means that we have sent the information over to the appropriate party, right? So if you want something in a classroom space or at the rec center, we can't automatically approve that for you, but we send it to the appropriate party so that they can take a look, and then they will approve or deny, and send you a confirmation email. So you should always be receiving confirmation emails from us letting you know what action we took on your event. And this could take a few days, right? For our department, it might take about 2 business days for you to hear back from us. If it's taking longer than that, let us know, especially if it's for SAP or union spaces. If you've requested something like a classroom, the rec center, Bauman Center, those take a little bit longer. So give us a few extra days for us to send it to them and for them to review it and get back to you. If it's been about a week or so and you haven't heard back, definitely let us know, because we do sometimes have issues with our emailing and we get a lot of bounce backs. So let us know and we will resend you any confirmations that we might have. Questions on 25 Live? Cool. I'm doing a lot better than the last presentation. I went way over time. Quickly on funding sources, because I know this is a question that always comes up. Funding sources, you can always do fundraisers, right? That is absolutely available to you. For non-funded organizations, you're able to request what's called an FSA bank account, where you can put all of your organizational funds. If you have questions or interest in that, please email Emma Cardona, and she can help with any questions or helping you set that up. We also have what's called an unfunded organization grant. This is for undergraduate organizations only, and it's provided for event-specific expenses. You have to apply, it's under that campus links on SB Engage. You have to apply at least a month before the date of your event, right? And it's for, if I'm doing my fashion show, I am requesting, I don't know, lighting or props for my event, something like that, right? It is not so much, I want to buy t-shirts for my organization just for us to have, right? That's the difference between what you can and can't spend that money for. For my undergraduate groups, right, you have access to the undergraduate student government for funding. However, their parameters are that you need at least 2 semesters of activity before you can apply for a probationary budget through them. And then once you've been able to properly handle your probationary budget, you can apply for a line budget that gives you a lot more flexibility with how you can spend that money. For my graduate organizations, the process is a little different. You don't need a minimum number of semesters of activity in order to begin requesting funds from GSO, but their funds are provided on a per event basis, not as a line budget, right? So it's not like your organization has $600 sitting in their bank account. Instead, you would request to GSO, hey, we want to have food at this event, and they would either pay for that or give you the money to buy it or do a reimbursement or something along those lines. But it's on a per event basis and not just money sitting in your bank account for you to spend however you'd like. So that is the end of my presentation. Some really key takeaways that I want you to know and really remember is make sure that all of your e-board members have accepted their position on the roster. Go look at your roster, go look on that pending section, and anyone whose email is on there means they have not accepted either their e-board position or their membership. So please tap them and say, hey, you should have received an email from SB Engaged. If not, show them how to get to that membership section that I showed you and have them accept their position so that your roster is up to date. Check out our website for resources and how to manage your organization. We have information on how to work SB Engaged, do 25 Live, how to do an off-campus trip, how to market your organization, right? We have a bunch of information, so check out our website for that on an as-needed basis. Don't forget to complete the e-board updates. I will send out information on that once you get back from break. And then do not forget to do your re-registration in April, right? Just because you have been recognized doesn't mean you stay recognized without doing some additional steps each year. If you have questions, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Reach out to studentengagement@stonybrook.edu or directly to your program advisor. If you have not received that information for your 25 Live or program advisor yet, you will receive it by the end of next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to stick around. I will be uploading this to our website and to YouTube if you want to go back and watch it again or share it with your members. I will share the presentation so that you have access to the links within it for additional resources. But I will also stick around if anyone has questions now, or if you have to do other stuff, then feel free. Thank you for coming. I will be sure to mark down your attendance. And don't forget to do your Prevent Zone training by the end of the year. And I will open the floor for